Welcome back to... If you're new, I'm your host, Bruce. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm the star of the show. I've got a special life hack for your makeup gurus balling on a budget. We all know how expensive beauty blenders are. Am I right, ladies? Totally annoying, I know. But that's why I'm here to help you save money. What's something we all have in our kitchen sinks? Right, a sponge. You know what else is a sponge? Yep, that's right, a beauty blender. So just take the sponge out of the sink and use it on how you would use your beauty blender. It works the same. So just to prove it to you, I'm going to show you side by side. Look here on the left. This picture is for using a makeup blender from the store. Retail price, $32. But here on the right, we see the same thing for no additional cost, saving you both time and money. Right and left. I get those confused. Anyway, until next week, go out and hack your life. Don't let your life hack you. Whoa.
Yeah, like 5 people clapping. Like, I don't even get it. That's what we want to do. We want to hack your life in positive ways for the glory of Jesus Christ so that he can be revealed in you in a greater way. How are you doing, Crossing Church? Are you doing okay? Good to see you. Good to be here. Oh, it's an awesome weekend to serve the Lord, to love the Lord, and to be used by the Lord. I want to welcome all of our campuses that are joining with us all across this region and so many more that are joining from inside, online, and .tv. We're thankful for each and every one of you. So it is camp season. I was there yesterday. We had a camp day. I think it was somewhere around 90% of the people that were there yesterday had never been to our camp before. They were blown away. I talked to one couple from Monmouth, and they were saying, we just can't believe what God is doing through the crossing in Monmouth and now here. And it's just like all opening up for them. And it's just so exciting to hear those stories over and over again. God's going to do incredible things this year at camp. He's going to turn so many young people's hearts toward the Lord and sponsors and adults as they minister to them. You know there's going to be 2,500 to 3,000 of them this summer season, and I'm so excited about that. So be praying about that God would work in that in a really profound and powerful way. Second thing I want to share with you is the weekend of July 4th and 7th. July 4th falls on a Thursday when we normally have services at many of our locations. And so we started thinking about maybe more creative things that we might be able to do for July 4th. And so part of that is going to be an interview of 2 veterans, and one's 25 and one's 95. So we have one who's a veteran of 2 tours in the Afghan War, and we have one that was under General Patton and has 5 battle stars from everything from D-Day to Remagen and the Battle of the Bulge, all of those in between. It's going to be an amazing time to share together. And this is what I want you to be considering. Everybody that you know that is a veteran, that's been in the military, I want you to invite them to be at one of our services. As a church, we're making a commitment that for every person that attends during that weekend, we're going to give $1. So we actually have about, 7,500, 8,000 people that are in one of our locations, another 4,000 to 5,000 that watch online. We're going to give $1 for everyone that is at any of our locations, and we're going to put that toward honor flights. So, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome, praying to God that we're able to do somewhere around 20 of those, 20 honor flights. And I just think if we can capture some of that, like on video, be really, really awesome. So want you to be here to celebrate our independence, to thank our veterans that have provided for that independence and at any of our locations. And so they're going to be doing different things at different locations. Keep that in mind. So we're in a series called Life Hacks, and we're trying to use that term in a positive way, how to change or adjust something to make it work to your benefit. And so what we did is we looked at the core values of our church, and we thought, well, how can we turn this into personal core values? If I were to come up and ask you, what are your personal core values, maybe you wouldn't even have thought of that. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's some goals I have, but do I actually have core values? So we started talking about that. In the first week, we talked about being outward personally. Like, who are the people that you know and love, that you're close to, that don't have an intimate personal relationship with Jesus Christ? And what can you do to influence them, to give them the most precious thing that you possess? We called it the Big Five. Do you remember that? Like, pick out your Big Five and just start praying for them right now. I hope you're doing that. Second thing we focused last week was with Clint Weir. How many of you enjoyed Clint? Yeah, he does a great job. We love having him speak to us. And he talked about focusing downward and how can we influence the next generation and the generation after that, and as they come into a relationship with the Lord. What are we doing with our children and our grandchildren and our foster children, and through adoption and all kinds of other ways that we can be personally involved in making a big difference in the next generation? Today, we're going to talk about that third core value. So we've done outward and downward. Now we're going to do relevant. We're going to talk about being relevant. Now, when we talk about it in a church context, we say we're going to do fresh things in fresh ways to reach people that no one else is reaching. I wonder if you could say that about your personal life, that you're willing to do fresh things in fresh ways to reach someone that maybe no one else is reaching. I remember a conversation I had a few years ago with the senior minister of the church where I was ordained. And it's not a small church. It was a church of about 2,000 on the west side of Indianapolis. And the whole area around there is just growing like crazy. I mean, they're just opening up neighborhoods and subdivisions as fast as they can build them on the west side of Indianapolis. And I remember being in his office, and he was exasperated. He was frustrated. And he goes, Jerry goes, I don't understand. We ought to be reaching people by accident. I mean, people ought to just be blowing us up. We shouldn't be able to contain what God's doing. But for some reason, we're just stuck. We're just static. And I didn't have the heart to tell him, I respect him. And I didn't have the heart to say, because you need to do some fresh things in fresh ways. You're still doing things the way you did them 20 years ago. And that's not relating to the new generation that's coming up. I can see that, like, from a church standpoint. Allison, my wife, and we've been working on the network of independent Christian churches across the country. There's somewhere between 5,500 and 6,000 of them. And one of the things we're doing is creating an online network, a directory, if you will. And part of that is looking at where they are on social media and on their website. And I have to tell you what, the vast majority, 90+% of churches in the independent Christian church have the most pathetic websites and social media platforms. All they do is scream at you, please don't come to our church. Because it's just completely irrelevant. You look at it and it's like, no. Why would I do that? Why would I ask my kids to go to that? And what we want to do is help build that up in a positive way so that people will say, yeah, I want to go to that church because it's relevant. It's speaking to me. Just a few weeks ago, we compiled a survey. We asked you to do this in January and February, to fill out a survey. And 1,031 of you responded at the crossing. And what we were doing was we were actually figuring out what we call a Net Promoter Score. That's a business term, and you can see how you're doing. People will tell you how you're doing on the basis of how willing they might be to recommend you. So if they rate your organization, in this case our church, from 0 to 10. So if you're a 0 to 6, you're a detractor. If you're a 9 or a 10, if you rated us a 9 or a 10, you're a promoter. If you're a 7 or 8, you're kind of neutral. So what we did with that 1,031 is you take the 7 and 8 out, you subtract the detractors from the promoters, and it gives you, on a percentage level, it gives you what's called the Net Promoter Score. Well, ours at our church was 71.5. And what that means is we're actually would be considered a world-class organization. Not good, not great, but world-class. And just to give you an idea, Facebook right now is negative 35 on their Net promoter score. So, isn't it interesting? I bet you experience this in your personal life. Somebody says something negative, and it means more to you than 300 people that would say something positive. And sometimes we can get skewed by that, and we can think, wow, we're not doing anything right. And it's kind of nice to get some objectivity, some perspective that goes, hey, we're not doing as positive as we could, but we're definitely doing well. That was good for us to hear as a staff, because we're striving to be intentional and relevant as a church. But what about you personally? How are you doing in this whole idea of relevance? Are you staying relevant, or are you just settling, becoming sedentary in how you relate to the people around you? We don't have any choice. Time marches on, so we all get older chronologically. But just because we get older chronologically doesn't mean we have to get old. Can I get a witness? Does anybody believe that? Yeah, okay. So the way we do that is we don't act like old people act. We have to learn how not to do that. I was in the drive-up window of Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is, maybe that's kind of old, but because I like Kentucky Fried Chicken. But anyway, I was in the drive-up window, and I'm getting my food and paying, and they said, oh, by the way, we have like a 5% discount for senior citizens. And I just wanted to just grab that person and punch him. Like, I couldn't do that, because, I'm like, I love Jesus. So I couldn't do that. So what I did do is I go, no, I don't want to save the money. Really? I would rather not save the money. Absolutely true, okay? So what we have to do is try to figure out how old people act and then don't act that way. Allison said, Jerry, if you ever bring home a Buick, I'm going to start shopping nursing homes, so you better not do it, okay? So some of you have Buicks, and you're going, I don't think that's very old. I don't know what you're talking about, So, what do old people drive? What do old people wear? Listen, if your closet is less up to date than the stuff in our thrift store, you probably need to go to the thrift store and get new. I know some of us are like, that looked great on me in 1975. I mean, it wears really well. You might need to change a little bit of your fashion sense, your fashion style. What do older people listen to? Yeah, I'm guilty. I'll find the classic station, playing the hits of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I'm not even thinking that the 70s music that I like is 50 years old. It's kind of pathetic when you see those guys on stage, and they're like 75. And spandex just doesn't work really well at 75. What do old people watch on TV? Like if you're watching all the reruns on Nick at Night, it might be a problem. You want to be able to stay in the conversation and not talk about reruns of Gilligan's Island. Anyway, what do old people eat? I'll tell you what old people eat. Old people go out to eat at places where they serve breakfast for supper. And they eat it at like 4:30 in the afternoon. Okay? So some of you need to come forward right now. And you either need to repent for acting like an old person or for having a desire to kill me right now in your heart, right? How do older people save money? I mean, I was raised by Depression parents. They wash the tinfoil. We need to think about, instead of washing the tinfoil, maybe you just need to concentrate more on recycling, all right, or something like that. Because we don't want to act that way. We might be growing old chronologically, but we don't have to act that way. Seems like the nature of a human being is to get stuck. And the older we get, we kind of find a place where we're comfortable and we want to kind of stay there. And we look back and we go, yeah, the 70s, that wasn't very long ago, but we haven't done the math for a while. Because it really was a long time ago. Our friends around us start dying, and we start running out of friends instead of making new friends. And so, for those of us that are on the older side of this relevance, We really need to pay attention to that. I mean, there also needs to be some attention for the younger side, and we're going to talk about both today. But I want to call your attention to 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. This is the Apostle Paul talking to his protege, Timothy, and instructing him how to do life and ministry. And this is what he says. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean like you're supposed to scold a person if they remark about your youth? No, he answers it right after this. But set an example for the believers in speech, in life, in love, in faith, and in purity. In other words, the Apostle Paul is saying, live your life in such a way that the fact that you're young chronologically is not a stumbling block to people that are older. Let me ask you a question. Does that only work on the young side? Or should that also work on the old side? It should work on all sides, right? Don't let anyone look down on you because you're older. Not just younger, but older, but set an example. And if you want to set an example in life and in love and in speech and in purity, what does that actually look like to be relevant to the culture that's around you? If you're younger, you don't want to be looking at people that are older than you and say, hey, I'm young, so just deal with it. You know, I have like a pass to be ignorant and stupid about things. He's instructing Timothy about living a life where he gives respect in order to receive respect. And if you're younger, you need to act in a respectful way. If you're older, you might need to work on being fresh. And I think we need to learn this young. You know, I don't think we need to learn this late. I think we need to learn this early. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon gives us an illustration of this. Some of this you may not have ever seen before. So let me help you, because what he's doing is he's doing an illustration of growing old in a poetic way, all right? So put on your poetry hats for a second. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble come and the years approach, when you will say, I find no pleasure in them. And I would imagine there's some of us all across our locations right now, online, inside, and you're saying, you know, the days have come where I really struggle to find pleasure in those days. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the rain. Now watch this. When the keepers of the house tremble, that's this. And the strong men stoop, that's walking like this. And when the grinders cease because they are few, that's these. And those looking through windows grow dim. That's talking about eyesight. When the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades, when men rise up at the sound of birds, but all their songs grow faint because you're having trouble hearing them. And when men are afraid of heights and of dangers in the streets. Do you remember when you weren't afraid to try anything? And the almond tree blossoms. When the almond tree blossoms, its blossoms turn white. And the grasshopper drags himself along, and desire, this is talking about sexual desire, is no longer stirred. Then man goes to his eternal home, and mourners go about in the streets. Remember your Creator. Just because chronologically the clock keeps running and that number gets higher doesn't mean you have to allow yourself to become the person that other people with that number might define you to be. You know, at our church we talk a lot about the dot. And the dot is that sweet spot, that median age in our auditoriums. And across all of our locations, it's about 40, 41 years old because all the children are back in children's ministry and things like that. And so that's kind of where we are. And we have a sweet spot on either side of that dot. So it'd be like 35 to 45. And that's where everything really makes the most sense. But if you're younger than that or you're older than that, you might be thinking, this church could do a little better meeting my needs, right? And that's why when we talk about the dot, we say, through that process of maturity, Christian maturity, we don't define that as you're giving more, you're attending more, or you know more of your Bible. What we say, Christian maturity, is when it's no longer about you. It's not about you. And you know what? Physical age or chronological age does not always equate to spiritual maturity. I know people that are young that can be very mature spiritually. People that are older chronologically that can be very immature spiritually. And I think some of the reason for that is that we can tend to become stale, in the groove, usual, normal for us, young or old. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of times we get stuck or we get stale in a particular area because it's comfortable. It's comfortable for us. But that comfort can actually contribute to your death, or at least your irrelevance, right? How many of you have been in a house that's been shut up for a while? When the windows have been shut and the doors have been shut and things haven't been running. You know that smell? That's the smell of stale. You don't want that smell of stale on you. You need to keep the windows open. You need to keep the doors open. You need to keep the fresh air coming through, right? We don't want to get so caught up in our own generation of life that we look at all the other generations of life and think that they're irrelevant when maybe it might be us becoming irrelevant. And the truth is, there's actually a sin in that, and that's the sin of pride. And the sin of pride is thinking that our generation had it right and all the other generations are all goofed up. Here's 6 ways that you can stay relevant, okay? Are you ready for this? Are you doing okay? Okay, 6 ways that you can stay relevant. Number 1, concentrate on what you do have and not on what you don't have. So some of us that are older, we used to have, but we don't have anymore, right? And there's many of us that are younger that don't have, and we see older people that do have. And what we do is we concentrate on all the things that we don't presently have, and it kind of bothers us, right? So I can remember looking better than I do now. Okay? For lots of reasons, you know. I'm going to call it metabolism. Some of you are going to say, well, that's probably habits, Jerry. But anyway, I can remember looking better, all right? So I just was on this vacation, did me a lot of good. And the end of the vacation, I went to a conference that was held at Atlantis in the Bahamas. How many of you have seen commercials of Atlantis in the Bahamas? Like 14? Or you're just like, I don't even want to raise my hand because it hurts. I've got like, no. Okay. I want you to watch this commercial. Back from Atlantis, nobody looks like that. Nobody. They all look like me. Because I'll tell you why, because you got to get my age to afford to go to Atlantis. And all those young people, the only reason that they would be able to go is if grandparents were footing the bill. I'm telling you, it's absolute truth. You see these perfect families and they're running along the beach. I was looking at there's nothing. It's like, I don't know, you know. Okay, so when you see things like that, you tend to want the things you don't have and not capitalize on the things that you do. And what I'm saying is to be relevant, look at what you have. You may not be parenting anymore, but you know what grandparenting is. That's God's reward for not killing your children. It's a good thing. I'm just saying all these things, whatever stage in life you are, just embrace those and be as relevant as you can in it. Number 2, don't diss modern culture. Try to understand it. We can become so frustrated with the realities of modern culture. And we always tend to want to go, well, when I was young, it was like this, but look what's happening today. Do you think that every generation thinks that the apocalypse is right around the corner? It's true. Every generation thinks that. But maybe it's just because we're not seeking to understand the generation that's coming up behind us. Let me give you an example, a church example, all right? So a few years ago, probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, online giving, like in the church, has become a bigger deal, and so you have to have a mechanism for that. And our mechanism was called push pay. So you could sign up for push pay and you could give online, right? And that's great. A lot of people were doing that. We've done that for a number of years. But technology continues to move forward, right? So we found an organization called Give, G-Y-V-E, that does the same thing, actually better than PushPay. And PushPay charged us $36,000 a year to use their service. But Give doesn't charge us anything. They figured out a way to do it that doesn't require that, okay? So, do you think it's wise for us in the leadership of the church to go, hey, let's save $36,000? That would be nice, right? So we've told people, we want you to move your PushPay account to Give, to this Give account. It'll save us a lot of money. And we started that last September. And we still get over $6,000 a week that comes through PushPay because people won't change. Now, that's the resistance that we can have to change. It's not better. PushPay is not better. Give's better, but we resist it, right? And so here's what I'm saying. If you're still on PushPay, change to Give. Thank you. All right? Because that would be a good thing. That would be good stewardship for the Lord. But it's just an illustration on how we have this resistance maybe to not change with culture and try to understand culture, but instead to kind of recoil, right? If you're younger, don't diss prevailing culture. Don't diss when I say previous prevailing culture, because every generation brings good things. They all bring difficult things, but they all bring good things. Try to understand that culture. Next one, keep up with technology. Don't blow off technology. You might think you don't need it, but you actually do. I looked this up. The first public accessible cell phone was 1983. It weighed 27 and a half ounces. That's almost a 2-pounder, okay? That is a big, heavy thing. It had a 30-minute battery life. It would only store 20 numbers. 30-minute battery life, 20 numbers, almost 2 pounds, and it cost $4,000 in 1983 money. I think that technology's moved forward a bit, and maybe we need to move forward with it. And let me tell you why that's important. Are your children or grandchildren going to be able to relate to you if you're not relating to them in what is the predominant technological culture around us? If you're still working on the aerials on your television set, or you're getting out the tin foil, you probably need to do something different in the area of technology. On the other side of the scale, on the young side of the scale, don't let technology rule your life. Who would agree with me that younger generations don't know how to have conversations anymore? Right, they don't know how to have a conversation, because if we get in a room, and I tell you, we get in the green room, everybody's back there, nobody's talking to each other, nobody's looking at each other, all going. How many of you sit down at a dinner table and that's the reality? You know what we need to do? Put a basket in the center of the dining room table and say, deposit the phone. People can wait. And I think that would go a long way to understanding the previous generation. It's all about relevance, right? It's all about relevance. Here's the next one. Keep your aches and pains to yourself or to a small group of people that you really, really trust. Okay? Because when older people talk about their aches and pains in front of young people are going, where do I need to commit you to, right? Because they don't realize that the older you get, the more things don't work. And the truth is, a lot of older people, when they start having aches and pains, at the same rate that they have aches and pains, they lose their filters. And so they tell you everything about their aches and pains. Like a lot of things you really don't want to hear. A lot of things that have way too much information. You know, because they're just used to it. They go to the doctor's office, and the doctor and the nurse, everybody's looking. So like the minister comes in, they go, hey, check this out. Like I don't want to, okay, TMI, I don't need that, all right? All right? And on the other side of this coin, do not flaunt the fact that you're younger. Like, hey, I can do all this. Why can't you do it? Right? Because if that guy that you're making fun of was your age, he might be able to kick your rear end. All right? That's what I'm trying to say. Because that's what age does. Next one, be a good listener. Get lots of feedback from people that are younger than you and that are older than you. Feedback is always a really good thing. You know, before I ever come out on stage, I always wear different clothes into church than the ones I'm wearing up here. And you know why that is? Because I'm doing my best to be relevant. So you're kind of getting a little transparent here, right? And so sometimes they'll pick something out and they'll go, you need to wear that. And and Allison will go, no. And you know why? It's because I would be trying too hard. There's nothing worse than an older guy trying too hard to look young, except for an older guy who doesn't care at all. All right? You know what I'm saying about that? Is that we need lots of feedback. People need to be able to say, yeah, that's good or that's not good. And you need to listen to that. You need to hear that instead of just saying, hey, well, this is how it is. Deal with it. Are you trying too hard or you're not trying at all? Here's the next one. Get out of the house. Get out of the house more. Go to church. Go to your small group or go to the gym or go out to eat or in my case, go to the gym or go to a movie or in my case, go to the gym or do something that doesn't involve a lot of sitting or like go to the gym, okay, or something. Yeah, I'm preaching to myself. I will be up here making a decision later. All right. Why am I saying all this? Why am I saying all this? We do fresh things in fresh ways. Could you say that? I do fresh things in fresh ways. Why? What is the relevance? What is the reason to be relevant? So I can reach people that no one else is reaching. So I can get in that conversation. So I can make that difference, right? We all want to be relevant, right? None of us wants to be marginalized. We want what we say to be taken seriously. We don't want to be dismissed. But what is the actual core purpose of staying relevant? Why do we want to stay fresh? The reason is right inside that core value. It gives us access to other people so that we can influence them for the Lord Jesus Christ. And how does that open up possibilities for new relationships? How do I leverage those relationships? How does that impact people that I would invite to church or to some sort of spiritual environment? A lot of us would say, I already invited everybody I know. You need to get to know some new people, right? Why? Relevance builds relationships, and relationships builds influence. How do I do that? I gave you 6 things about being relevant. Here's 4 things about developing influence. Number 1, be good at Jeopardy. Be good at Jeopardy. Now, I say that because what makes Jeopardy different than every other game show on TV is you have to put everything in the form of a question, right? So here's what I'm saying. Ask more questions and make less statements. Ask more questions and make less statements. When we make a statement, when I was in school, I had to walk 3 miles. You know the rest of that, right? Don't make statements. Ask questions. And you can ask pointed questions. And listen to what people have to say. Don't just get locked down. Listen. Number 2, don't stereotype. I would imagine every millennial and a lot of people in Gen Z have already heard multiple times that they are an entitled generation. We just put that label on all of them. You're entitled. Aren't you the people that, you leave for a while, you run up some big debt, and then you come back and live in mom and dad's basement? We stereotype, but what we need to do is be careful to see people as unique individuals. Number 3, don't be the hero in your own stories. Be self-deprecating. Talk about your failures too, so people can see that you're real. I'll tell you this, from all the years I've been preaching, people lean a lot more into a sermon when a preacher's real. And number 4, pray for opportunities to share what you value the most, and that is your relationship with Jesus Christ. I could probably tell you the time in my life I felt the most relevant, but I'm going to tell you the time in my life when I felt the least relevant. I was about 28, 29 years old, and I got a phone call from the authorities that a lady who went to my church, her son had been found in Chicago dead in his apartment, and he'd been dead in that apartment for 6 days, I think. He didn't have a lot of friends in Chicago, and he was a diabetic. He went into diabetic shock, diabetic coma, and died, and no one found him for a long time. And they made it my responsibility to go find his mother and tell her what had happened to her son. She worked down at the Kmart in Greencastle, about a 20-minute drive from where I was living. And I remember driving down there thinking about what I was going to say. And I went into the store and I got a hold of the manager, and the manager called her up to the front. And I watched this woman collapse at the news of what had happened to her son. And I was there for her, and I prayed with her and told her I'd be over later. And there was a process that we had to go through that was a very, very difficult process. But there was one moment when I was at her house, and we were talking about arrangements, and she was talking about how she felt. And I was sitting there next to her, and I said this. I said, I understand. It was the most irrelevant thing I could have ever said. Because when I said that, this normally gentle, smiling, nice lady, her face contorted into an anger I had never seen out of her face before. And she looked at me, and she shook her finger at me, and she said, no, you don't. And then her face softened because she was a believer. And she looked at me again and she goes, and I hope you never, ever do. And I realized at that moment, in my 28, 29 years of life, I had no understanding of what this mother was going through. None. And I needed to admit that I didn't. And I needed to help her even in the midst of my ignorance. And here's what I'm saying when it comes to relevance. All of those things I said are critically important to being able to reach a wider set of people for Jesus Christ. If you're young, people that are older than you. If you're older, people that are younger than you. And the more you can widen that out, the more impact that you're going to have for Jesus Christ, and the more joy you're going to have in your life as a result of it. So I would encourage you to make relevance, personal relevance, a core value in your life as you serve Jesus Christ. We're moving to a time of decision.
What up, YouTube family? Hope you guys enjoyed this week's message. I'm gonna encourage you guys to do 4 things today. 1, would you hit that like button and let us know that the content that we're producing is being a benefit to you and to your family? Second thing I'm gonna encourage you to do is hit that subscribe button so that we can start to coalesce and go on this journey together. The third thing I'm gonna encourage you to do is hit that bell button. That bell's gonna turn on your notifications, so every time we upload content, you'll be notified so you can join in with us as soon as possible. And then the last thing is, if you feel like you've been blessed to be a blessing and you don't give to another church, we would love to give you an opportunity to be generous with us as we try to be generous towards God. You can go into the description below and you can click that link for the Give app, and it will walk you through everything you need to do to make that a reality. We appreciate you, we love you, and God bless you.